Today's edition of Mac Voices is supported by MacVoices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like Mac Voices, MacVoices Magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for Mac Voices Magazine on Flipboard. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we're back with another one of our 5 question shows, and I'm not sure if to be honest with you, I'm not sure if I've ever had our guest this time on just as a solo on Mac Voices. I know he's been on some of the Mac juries, but I don't think John F. Braun has ever been solo here. John, welcome. It's good to talk to you.
Thank you very much. No, and I typically do not do video, but I do have the adornments, as you can see here.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you stretching out a little bit, and I'm a little embarrassed. I can't figure out why you've never been on solo just to talk about yourself or anything, but we're fixing that now. So,
well, I had to get in line with everybody else. It seems you've talked to just about everybody else in the tech and Mac community. That's what I can see, Chuck. I don't know how you do it.
I don't know about that, but I do my fair share. Let's put it that way. I thought you, John, would be a particularly good 5-question person because I look at you and I listen to you on Mac Geek Gab, and I consider you like the geek's geek. I mean, there's, and I mean that in the best possible way. That you approach things in a very geeky fashion. You have all the attributes of a professional geek, and so I thought it would be good to dig into your head a little bit about some of the things you do, and we'll see what comes out.
I would say it probably started. So the men on my side of the family tended to be technical and hands-on and engineers and, fixing things, which is kind of what engineers do. And even at a young age, I always wanted to take things apart and figure out how they worked. And that's honestly how I got started. Now, at first, some of the things that I found, like an alarm clock and some things, my dad was able to fix. At some point, he wasn't able to fix it. So I'm like, here's my calling. Can I do this in school? Can I fix things or solve problems or maybe find a machine that could do it? And, as most of us here, we grew up, at some point in the, I would say the, early 70s maybe, but the 80s was when, whether you were in school or you were older and a hobbyist and just hung out with those people, it was like, what kind of machine can do this for me? And so for me, where the whole computer thing started, without meandering too much here, but the whole computer thing started was actually when I went to middle school. So middle school, they had a PDP something or other with a teletype, yes. So that's around when I went to school. And just the things that it could do. So they were like, here, let's show you this thing called BASIC that lets you tell the computer what to do, and you're just looking at, wow, this is like incredibly powerful. And I went from that in my school system to then they got an Apple II, and that was even better because it was like, oh my, I mean, it was really a leap in technology from a teletype run PDP, something with video. So it was just mostly awesome time, like a lot of us who now do this semi or professionally. It was a great era to grow up in, and I just latched onto it and eventually, fell into both doing that for education, but also hooked up with our good friend who I grew up with, Dave Hamilton. We actually ran competing but complementary bulletin board systems, and that's how I got to get into the Mac tech community, was through Dave Hamilton.
And here you are.
Yes. So there's a kind of whirlwind tour of how I got where I am today.
Well, that's pretty good. And one of the questions I have in mind may dig back into that. But first up, you kind of know the rules of the game here. You don't know the 5 questions that I'm going to ask you. I don't even know the 5 questions I'm going to ask you because,
all right.
Sometimes one feeds into the next. But before we do that, give us just a quick idea of what, and it doesn't have to be an exhaustive list, but maybe like your top level Apple hardware, Macs, iPads, iPhones, that kind of thing. So we sort of have a baseline. And that's not one of the 5 questions.
Okay, well, that's easy. So my podcasting machine, so this is my office here, but it's a Mac Mini 2014. I previously had a 2012, but 2014 had a lot of things that I wanted, like higher speed ports and all that. Two LCD screens plugged into that. That's a leap that I just made. I had never really at home been a dual screen person, but I had the screen available, and I'm like, I think I have the adapters and things to make it dual screen. So that comes in handy. My daily driver is what I would consider one of the last of the great Macs, Chuck, and I'm being very serious. And that's the mid-2012 MacBook Pro 15-inch, because it was the last Mac that had all user-accessible components replaceable, and that means the battery, the RAM, and the hard drive. You take the bottom off, they're all there. You want to replace them, very easy. Then Apple, in my humble opinion, lost their way. Well, I can understand why they do it, and as a stockholder, I'm very happy with all the money that they're making, as a lot of us, at some point bought some Apple stock, and they're doing great. I mean, they're selling stuff, but I can understand why they want to design the machines the way they do, because it's less of a headache to support. If something has something soldered to it, there's no chance for the user to screw it up and try to replace it and break something. So I can understand that, and it's probably more, less costly to make systems and less costly to support. So I'm nervous about my next machine. This one, for now, it's an i7, 2.6 gigs or whatever. But that's my daily driver, and it more than serves my needs. I never see any of the gauges, unless something's going wrong, get to their maximum. So, and an iPhone 7, unfortunately with a small crack in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. So,
oops,
I have to figure out how to deal with that. Yeah, it's the first iPhone really that I fumbled. So I've had a 4, a 5, a 6, and now a 7. It's the first one that I lost hold of, and it landed in the wrong way. It's still usable. It's a crack.
Right.
You know how it gets when you have a new toy and all of a sudden it gets a little scuff or bump or a little crack.
Yeah. Apple TV?
I have a third generation. It's not something, I'm a TiVo type of guy, so it's kind of redundant in that we actually had a listener to our show, so we have a great community for our show. I've exchanged gifts with many of our listeners, and they have sometimes given me a gift. And actually, the Apple TV that I have is a gift from one of our listeners. And in exchange, I gave them, I think, one of the many iPods that I had, because I felt, well, here's something. And they wanted it. I think they turned it into a watch. So we had a nice little geek exchange. That was cool. Apple TV is, and I haven't tried the fourth generation. My initial impression of the remote control is what a freaking nightmare. I don't know about you, but the thing is, if I can't pick something up and figure out how to use it, especially based on past experience, and maybe that's the problem, then I'm like, this isn't really designed very well. And I just had a problem with the latest Apple TV remote. But the third does when I need to. Netflix, which I recently started doing. But the TiVo, I got the TiVo Bolt because they had a great upgrade deal, and it interacts quite well in a Mac environment. So that's really my go-to for entertainment, or for a lot of it anyways.
Okay. iPad?
I have one that is it's an iPad Air. It's right now out for repair, so we'll see what happens with that. I used it mostly. Some people will shake their fist, but I use it mostly as a consumption device. It's a very nice, the form factor makes it very better than an iPhone for consuming certain things. I was trying to use it for a productivity tool. I never got into that because to me it's just, you have to jump through too many hoops versus just getting a portable MacBook to do that sort of thing. But I appreciate the effort that people go through to educate us on how to do it if you really want to. But.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people are very passionate about it, no question. One last hardware question, because I think I've covered all the Apple tech. Did I ask Apple Watch? I don't think I did.
No.
No Apple Watch. Okay. What, if you don't mind me asking this, what's your big screen TV option?
Right now, I recently upgraded it. So before I had a Samsung, it was probably over a decade old. It was one of the first HD TVs, 720p technically. And that was great, but it weighed 70 pounds and it was really old and it drew a lot of power, relatively speaking. It was one of the first ones. I think it had like CFL backlight or something like that. So, but it was nice. It was pretty. Eventually, I gifted it to my parents, and I got so I have an LG 42-inch 1080p in what I call my entertainment center. And for the distance I am from the couch, that's more than enough, and all my devices talk to it.
Okay, good. Okay, so first question, and I'm going to go back to your history a little bit. Because you said how Dave was sort of the one that drug you into the Mac technical community, but with your background and your interest and all, and exactly when you came along, was it the Apple II that brought you into the Apple world? Because as much of a geek as you are, I would have thought that you would have kind of headed over to the PC world, where there's my perception is there's a lot more technical stuff to be done or to be played with.
Well, you know what, Chuck? You can do both, or you can do many. So, I mean, a lot of the inspiration was the Apple II. So my first that I bought, or I used, was a Apple IIe at home. And I also ran a bulletin board, and that taught me some things, many things. Then there were, it was mostly Apple IIs in grade school. And then going, and actually for the beginning of my undergrad work, was still the Apple II was the state of the art. I think the Mac came in further along in my undergrad career in that I did an internship, and it was for GE. And our boss was very, and it was kind of a R&D type group that was always willing to try new things to get the job done. And we were set with Mac IIs, which, as you know, was the first Mac that had slots. And we would write software in HyperCard, and that probably was my first programming or UI experience with the Mac, and it just pleased me because versus the Apple II, it did and kind of still does, kind of mostly works for the most part if you just have if the interface does what you expect, which most times it doesn't. Whereas the early machines like the Apple II and the PC, not always. Though I did. Also, so along with doing Mac stuff, the languages that I learned, we were doing Pascal, so that was kind of state of the art then. There was Fortran on the mainframes. There was C, which is still my strongest language and the one I like best. But I used all sorts of different machines. PDP, what was it? A VAX. I used a VAX. We used AIX machine, various flavors of Unix, including Apple IIs and PCs. So they all have their uses. It's just for me, for a home machine, the Mac made the most sense. Apple, kind of because it was a rebel thing. It was kind of like, the Apple II people versus the trash 80 people, and and all these different, microcomputer communities. They were all pretty crappy, but it was fun back then.
Yeah, that's the first time I've heard the phrase "trash 80" in a long time. that brings back fond memories. Huh. Okay. So let's shift to something a little more current. In what program or programs do you spend most of your day?
Interesting.
Are you in the terminal
on the Mac,
a lot, or?
Not really, no. I'll go to the terminal if I need to fiddle with something, but for day-to-day use, there's nothing in the terminal unless I'm solving a problem. So, typically for a listener, then I have to dig in, but no, I rarely go into the terminal. For the most part, I think like most of us, I run a lot of my social media to keep in touch with what my, friends and family are doing. So Facebook, or at least notifications for a lot of the services. Maybe you're not always running them. So I'm always running Twitter because there's always something happening there, squirrel, and all that great stuff. So I'll glance at that. Email, I have it set up so if it's something really important, like on my VOP list, I'll get a notification for that. Otherwise, random surfing of just world news, local news. A lot of it, again, comes by email. It's still a technology that a lot of people still, use to get their notifications, oddly enough, despite the spam. When I'm out and about, I almost always have the iPhone. But when I had it break on me, I didn't think there's so many things that you offset now to the iPhone to know about. So one thing is that I do some investing, stocks and other things, and all of the major players have an app that runs on your phone, so you can be buying and selling stock while you're. And I've done this like on the train, or track things, or get alerts. So if that's the way you like to make money, or think you want to make money. But when I lost my phone for a couple of days, Apple pays another one. I mean, I almost reply on that. I totally rely on that, losing that ability if a phone is out for repair or something like that.
I would not. I mean, well, okay. I was about to make a generalization, so I will make this a 2B, a 2A question. But are you a day trader, or is it just you manage your investments?
Sometimes.
Sometimes, really. I would.
It's something to dabble with. I'll have to think. There's a lot of us. So I bought some Apple over a decade ago, and if you followed how they're doing, that's provided enough of a portfolio where I learned, so you can get this type of account called a margin, where you can basically trade things, and you're basically borrowing the money against your equity with your broker. But if you look at the numbers and you see something going in a certain direction, and you can borrow the money, which if you do it in a day, the interest may be on the order of single or double digits in dollars, and if you can make 100 times that, okay.
Yeah.
So there's risk involved. I've had some go south, like all of us that are
Sure.
into stocks. I got my long-term holdings, but it's a very interesting. I still like to call it legalized gambling, because a lot of it really is. There's so much to it.
Yeah. Interesting. Do you trade based? Again, this is sort of continuation, but I'm fascinated because I know you. Are you a technical trader? Do you trade based on news, or are you a price earnings ratio kind of guy, or is it just whatever happens to come your way that you think you see something that maybe the market hasn't reacted to yet?
There's so many different sources of info. So there's the finance, Yahoo Finance has a nice app. I use it to track some of my stocks and keep track of things. It'll give you notifications if something interesting happens. There are so many sites, I don't even know where to start. Just the app that comes with the iPhone is a real-time, gives you real-time quotes.
Right.
Sometimes that's useful. Something may be happening, and you can watch it and see the graph and be like, wow, something's happening. I better get in on this. And I've done that more often than not. If you can ride the wave and get in and get out. I mean, it's so amazing versus, how this all happened in the old days, which is like, you call somebody on the telephone and be like, yeah, I'd like to buy it. The technology in the financial system, I know some people that do, back in, including some of these risky things, but it's amazing how it operates now within a matter of seconds. You say, I want to buy this, sell this. And it's like, yep, okay.
Yeah.
Seconds, not days.
Yeah. Yeah, you start to realize just who you're trying to compete with if you're having to pick up the phone and call your broker and have him call you back,
And I like the other tools. My favorite right now, since we seem to be talking finances, but Mint.com is very nice. So it's an app from Intuit, where they bought it at one point. But it's basically a website you go to, and they also have an app. You hook in, you basically give it some information, it verifies you are you, and it basically shows you every thing that you have from a monetary point of view. So you can input your accounts, it connects securely to them to read them, you give the value of your house. To boil it down, so it'll give you alerts if weird things are happening, but it'll also show you your net worth, which is like really kind of cool, and it'll historically graph things. So it's like, okay, well, you seem to know what you're doing with stocks, so that's cool, but this other thing you're doing isn't working. So it's really cool that you have an app that can give you the big picture rather than having like a financial advisor, which some of us do.
Yeah. Okay, so let's swing to the whole other end of the spectrum. What entertainment services do you subscribe to? In what I mean by that is, and I think you may have mentioned Netflix, but Apple Music or Spotify or whatever. Video services, anything else that delivers content that you consume?
I still have cable TV, So our local. So I watch a lot of shows through that, whether it be sci-fi. So there's various series that I don't have it in front of me, but I still consume a lot of cable stuff. But I do it on the TiVo, so I can watch it at my convenience. Like I mentioned to you, I recently signed up for Netflix. Not that I couldn't have in the past, but I want to try something new with the new TiVo, and for HD content, it's only $10 a month. I mean, dude. And I binge a lot of things that I don't have on disc. I have a lot of discs and all that. Let me see. Is there a sign up? I mean, other than cable, I got a lot of my old ripped content on my Synology, and I stream it through a Denon Hios, which is a wireless thing that can read from a, is it UPnP? I think it's a UPnP, or no, it's another acronym. It'll come to me in a moment here.
DLNA?
DLNA, yes. So Synology can publish DLNA content, and then I have a Denon Hios. I also have a Airport Express hooked up to some Audio Engine speakers, and so I can stream to that as an AirPlay destination. And those speakers are still awesome, even though they're like so. They make good speakers. I don't know if you have any Audio Engine stuff. And then I'll go to our library a lot and get old school, well, relatively old school, and then our local library system. So we have a number of them. I think we have 3 of them. They typically have the same titles that Redbox has. So Tuesday is new title release day. So sometimes I'll go to my library and see what they have, and sometimes I'll get it for free. Though Redbox isn't terribly expensive. So I do all sorts of different. Not the music thing. Believe it or not, I actually listen to one of our local rock stations for entertainment. Not really into. Sometimes I'll peruse YouTube and look for, new music videos. Most of my listening though is fixed, fairly fixed, classic rock, if you will, I guess is the genre. So all over the place. Movie theater. I think the last time I went to a movie theater was Avatar in 3D in Manhattan, so that was kind of cool. But other than that, I got a pretty decent. I told you I got a 42-inch screen. I got 4 speakers surround. Okay, it's not the best, but it's a relatively small room. But even that, it's it does for me.
Okay, and that's really interesting, and I applaud you for the library thing. It fascinates me how many people seem to just totally overlook that as an option. They think of the library as the way it used to be when they were kids, whenever that was, and libraries are so much different now, and they offer so many options. And a lot of times, there are some libraries. I know one of the local libraries here, you can rent content straight from your house. You never need to.
They do have that. There's a system. It's called Hoopla, I think. So if you have a library ID, you can sign up to this service that I assume our library or government pays them for, but it lets you stream older digital content, kind of virtually taking it out, kind of like at the library, because they only have a fixed number of copies. So they offer that too. They offer museum passes for like all the local museums. We've got some historic, even in Connecticut here, I have some historic things going on, and you can get a lot of passes for free. It's and they adapt. I mean, obviously, I got an internet lab, computers, DVDs, of course, of music and stuff like that. So yeah, library science and all that, it evolves with everything else. They still got books. I don't know if that's their primary motivation now. And a museum and all sorts of community events. I mean, it's really a hub of the community, as I think it is for most.
Yeah, and that it's a friend of mine used to say that it's the most democratic of entities, because it's available to everyone. Not democratic in the political sense, but more just in the idea that anyone can take advantage of the library, and it's up to you to do it. But if you do it, it can be a wealth of information, a wealth of resources, and a wealth of entertainment. So, tip of the hat to Mr. Braun for pointing that one out.
Yeah, support your library.
You better believe it. Okay, so let's swing to the future, John. sort of as an anticipation of the next question, which I believe is number 4. Have you been playing with any of the betas, iOS or High Sierra?
I currently only have one iOS device, and I think in general it's a good rule not to install beta software on your daily. Seriously, some people, some of your audience I think may not know better, but beta means something terrible may happen and you could lose everything. That's what beta means. And they kind of, it's in the small print, if you sign up for the public beta or you get the developer, so I'm part of the developer programs because I'm a developer, mostly Windows, but, I've used the Mac tools and the other tools. But, so no, I haven't run the iOS 11. I mean, I saw the presentation and, there's some nice additions there. I think more important for making the iPad more computer-like. When I saw the keynote, that was the impression that I got is, okay, some of the incremental changes for the iPhone class devices are interesting. Like the driving things so you don't, harm those around you by being an idiot and using your phone while you're driving. That's kind of cool. But some of the usability features and just the iPad hardware, I don't have one. They'll look pretty sexy when I saw that, the latest iPad, with all the accessories. I was like, wow, this can almost replace a computer. I think it actually could.
Yeah. Okay, so so it sounds like you haven't played with a lot of it, a whole lot.
Well, High Sierra. The thing is, High Sierra is really, the thing is, when I went in the system preferences, so a lot of times the first thing I'll do when I get a new OS is go in the system preferences and look and see if there are any either new control panels or options. And honestly, in the High Sierra, I couldn't really find a lot. So I'm running the developer beta. I think it's 4. I know there's later ones. But using it, there's some incremental. It's one of these incremental updates. It's nothing to write home about, but they fixed some things. They made some things better. A lot of incremental features, new features in Photos and new features in Safari, to prevent you wasting your time on bad sites. The AR stuff on iOS, that looked pretty compelling. Again, I don't know how compelling it may be on an iPhone, but definitely on something with a larger screen.
Okay, so with all that, with the experience you've had with it, what are you looking forward to in either High Sierra or iOS 11? Is there a specific set of functions or features that would make you say this is just a drop-dead outstanding upgrade?
I honestly don't think that's the point of this release, and that it's one of these every other release. Let's fix the plumbing. Let's make sure that everything underneath. And they announced some others. I'm trying to go from memory here. The graphics subsystem, the augmented reality subsystem. Everything is now 64 bits, which should have been a while ago. Which basically means that you won't have a 32-bit driver, other crazy thing taking your system down. They're making the system more stable. And the performance of some of the apps and some of the features. But, I'll get it. The price is right. But I think most of the impact is going to be, improved stability and improved performance to the things they did underneath the covers that don't necessarily get all of the attention. Yeah. I count on the next release, whatever they're going to call it. That's the one where I think we're going to see more feature upgrades than plumbing and stability upgrades.
Yeah, I would agree. That's sort of been the cycle for these secondary name releases, Sierra versus High Sierra and all. So I'm with you. There are a couple niceties I've seen, especially in iOS 11, that make me say, boy, But I'm also with you. My devices are too mission critical. I'm not going to run beta software. And it makes me a little crazy that we're seeing so much stuff, so many tips and tricks written up for iOS 11 that are based on betas. And at this point, they probably everything will still be in there. But it makes me want to go and do this. And it's like, now I have to file that now and look at it in a couple weeks or whenever we get the actual updates. So. Okay, so number 5. As we record this, we've just found out very recently that Apple will be doing a September 12th event of some kind. We don't know exactly what it is. Obviously, we anticipate it will be an iPhone event at least, but we don't know. But let's just pretend that it's not just an iPhone event. What would Tim Cook have to introduce that would make you immediately pull out your credit card, and say, I want that, and I want that right now? Mac, and that's open to Mac, iPhone, iPad, Apple TV, Apple Watch, or anything else that you can think of.
Well, I think the iMac Pro was a step in the right direction, and then they announced the new Mac Pro that will hopefully have a new. So those have been announced already. So those wouldn't really do it for me.
Yeah, but you personally, you got to stick your hand in your wallet and pull out the cash for. What would?
Well, a MacBook Pro that's really Pro. Not the current line.
And really, Pro means.
To me, Pro means user accessible, user access to a lot of things. And some things have changed. So you got the traditional things, the battery, the wireless hardware, maybe. I delved into trying to upgrade my current machine from N to AC, and there was 1 or 2 companies that offered something, but they never shipped a product. So, but just something to let people get. I would like to see them make less of an effort to make things inaccessible, including the phones. I mean, there's not I understand, I mentioned to you, I dropped it, and so there's a crack on the case. Is that something I'm willing? I've never worked on an iOS device, and the only ones that I've had, well, including an old, it was a iPod Touch. I did manage to break it while I was trying to follow a tutorial on how to break the screen. So replace the screen. So I'm like, okay, this is not for me. They're just not designed to be worked on. So what else, though? I mean, I don't know if the Apple TV is going to really do anything. I don't think I could say anything in that, but for me, media is TiVo.
Stop there for a second. Media is TiVo because of the time shift, because of the ability to record cable.
It talks to all. So it lets me access the content via multiple means, and the way they do that is very nice. Now I know Apple introduced that as well. So their latest app, right? I think it was their TV app. Allegedly, it does this as well, or their new TV platform as well. So, no, nothing in that realm. I'm trying to think of some other realms here. I got to say, home control. I'm starting to dip my toe into that. It's still a market that I think is emerging. I think even if you're what I'll call Joe Sixpack, well, maybe not Joe Sixpack, but I think most people at this point, outside of our community, which is unique in its own respect, Chuck, and that we're techies and we're computer people and kind of journalists and reporters and stuff. But I still get the sense that there's still a long way to go. A lot of us are early adopters with the Echo and things like that. But what I'd like to see is Apple actually doing the job right when it comes to home automation. And HomeKit right now sucks. I'm sorry, because, well, I'm going to say that because nothing that I have works with it. Whereas I have a boatload of things. Seriously, but I have a boatload of things that all work with Alexa. It's mind-boggling. I got a light switch that someone gave me. It controls my link bulbs when my where HomeKit doesn't. There's so many things that it does that Apple should have done. I think they honestly lost their way, and I hope they find it again, because I really would like to use their system capabilities, Siri or whatnot, to do things around my home, and I can't. I don't have any one device right now that will talk to HomeKit. So, you want me to throw money at you? Get HomeKit to work with my stuff, Tim. That's what I'm saying.
That's okay. That's interesting. I mean, and I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses for Apple, but it sounds like you may have been an early adopter of some of this stuff, and well, Apple has doubled down, according to them, and there's evidence to that effect, on the security and the privacy issues. And a lot of the especially the early manufacturers out there, they didn't or couldn't or didn't have the specs or just opted not to spend the money to have these devices HomeKit compatible, and therefore, at least, I hope it's beyond a theory, more secure. Now, we've had some folks on who have said, well, look, if you have, and I want to be careful, I don't want to trigger everyone's devices. So if you have a Siri device that also is the Amazon device compatible, that it's not as secure because obviously you can get in through the Amazon device. And so, I'm wondering if there's a market out there for strictly HomeKit only items, devices that would make, it would make me feel a lot more secure. I would be much more inclined to trust, let's say, a HomeKit only camera. As opposed
I agree. Yeah, I've looked at their. Yeah, they have a document. Or I looked at it. They're using AES. They're using all the encryption. I think they may have spent too much time on that and not enough time talking to vendors saying, "Hey, how can we get our stuff to work with you? How can we get your stuff to work with our platform?" That's the thing I find lacking. On the other hand, you make a good point. Is that a lot of the technology I have, like these Link bulbs, was I bought a number of years ago, and it was the coolest thing at the time, but it's relatively dated technology from that group. So, and actually another thing I have, it's an AC control. That one also is the one that doesn't have the HomeKit circuitry. So, I have to upgrade some things in order to... and I've seen some of the videos that were cool, watching them. I don't know how realistic they are. I don't know how much you use Siri and or... I'm sorry, I said her name, so I won't say the... So I won't say Alexa because that'll set everything else off as well. No. The thing that gets me is, so I have one of the Amazon devices in my TV room, and there are certain phrases and certain things that I watch, whether it be Netflix or a DVD or something like that, where all of a sudden she'll just react. And then I'm trying to figure out, what were you reacting to? And when I ask her that, she doesn't know. Right. She's like, "Oh, thank you." And I'm like, "Why did you just say, oh, thank you?" What? That's the weird part, I think, about that platform, is that I've never had the Apple product give me a false positive. Well, I don't use it as much, so.
And, I've had a couple of those too, not a lot, but just once in a while something will happen, and it's like, I don't remember hearing anything that sounded like your trigger phrase.
Mm-hmm.
And now, but what's really interesting is when I've seen when you see the Amazon device ads on TV. I'm trying desperately not to slip and say the word. There's something about the way they've coded that or recorded that never triggers my devices.
Our friend Dave actually looked into that. So apparently there's some audio thing, you may know about this, some notch filter or something. Supposedly you can apply to an audio clip that will make it not trigger certain devices. And it's a thing where a normal person wouldn't be able to tell, but, like a notch filter. You know what that is, of course. You better. Yeah. So say the device is saying, okay, there's audio missing in this range. I'm not going to react to it. Oh, well, that's kind of neat.
Yeah, that explains it. I'd never heard an explanation before. So interesting. Well, John, what do you want to do? Other than lights and air conditioner and those things, is there anything in particular that you want to do with your HomeKit devices that you're looking forward to?
A basic control, and I have that to a certain degree with the bulbs that support it. So lights on, lights off. I do like the summary of the news at the end of the day that you can ask for. What I really like to see, and I've seen some devices that advertise to do this, but what I think would be really interesting, I think they're standalone products. So maybe it doesn't need to be built into Apple, but getting me a sense of energy is very important. And energy costs money. And we all want to save energy, because if you save energy, economically, certain things are supposed to happen, right? But also we want to pay as little as possible for it. Understanding what trying to think what you'd call it. Maybe you would call it something like the Apple product or the other product, but something that could kind of look at what's happening in your house and kind of bring it all together and tell you maybe if something's going wrong. I don't know. Or make recommendations to do almost like a site survey, but for your home. And I know there are people with some energy companies that'll do that, and they'll use some of the tools you can get with your computer to survey your house, where you're wasting energy. The best that I can do is a lot of electrical companies will let you read your meter, and you can see, okay, at this point in time, the meter says this. But some intelligence applied to what in your home you're using your energy with.
Wow, that would have to be kind of far-reaching, because pretty much wouldn't that require all your devices, literally everything, to be plugged into something that then could be monitored?
I've seen some devices that claim to be able to detect something through the power line itself, like kind of a feedback loop or something. That they're able to sense certain behavior on the line and say, okay, that's this device, and here's how much it's using. I don't have many more details beyond that. Sorry, I just had to block an incoming call, which is using the wonderful handoff technology. Somebody did not want to talk to you. So, yeah, that's one of these things been happening as of late. You get a call on your cell phone with the first 6 digits are the same as yours. It's not somebody you know. And it's not somebody I know.
Yeah.
Very annoying.
Just heard something on the news this morning for the very first time that some parents in our area have been receiving those kind of calls allegedly from a school. And, that's really not cool. So I've hoped, even more so than the normal spammers, the phone spammers, I hope they find those people and do really nasty things to them, because that's just unconscionable. John, there's so many things I would like to ask you and dig in. We got to do this again, because I've learned a number of things here that I didn't know about you, and I'm kind of intrigued by them. So we will ask 5 more questions at some point in the future and get a little more out of you.
Okay.
Just try to tie you to the rack. So obviously, folks can hear you with Dave Hamilton on Mac Geek Gab, where the two of you solve a whole lot of problems for so many people. But do you have social media presences or anything else that you'd like to point people to where they can contact you?
On Twitter, I'm always on Twitter and monitoring that. That's John F. Braun. Pretty much any major platform. Facebook, I believe I mapped that handle. Flickr, I like to take pictures from time to time. I think I'm also John F. Braun on there. Instagram, I think you can also find me as John F. Braun on there. Yeah, maybe we can talk pictures. That's something I've always liked to do, but it's a lot more fun with a phone, of course. I think those are all the presences. That should get people started if you want to stalk me. That'd be great.
Interesting way to phrase it, John. I was not thinking of stalking. I just, if they wanted to ask your financial advice or something. But, hey, whatever. Well, hey, thank you so much for subjecting yourself to this, because it's always, I think, a little nerve-wracking when somebody says, yeah, I want to ask you 5 questions, but I'm not going to tell you what. So you did very well.
All right, Chuck. Thanks so much.
Good to talk to you. We'll talk to you again soon. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Voices. That's 5 questions with John F. Braun. I hope you learned some things. I certainly did. And I'm going to go and look into day trading. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes, links to subscribe, and to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, SoundCloud, the Mac Voices blog, the Mac Voices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, and on MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard that helps you do more with your Apple tech. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.